Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all doing? Good.
Okay. So what we're going to do is a little bit similar to what we did with James Tallarico, but I'm going to ask Congressman Castro a few extra questions because he's currently serving, in Congress, and let's just say it's been a real shitstorm there, so we have a lot to talk about. All right. So
Sounds good. All
yeah,
right.
let's just, Joaquin, we're friends, and let's just have a good time. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So can you tell us about that moment years ago when you decided to run for Congress?
Yeah, I mean, Nancy, you mentioned that I had a family that was very involved in grassroots politics. My mom was very involved in the Mexican American civil rights movement in San Antonio for years. And so I grew up with politics, grassroots politics, really at the heart of my home. And I served in the legislature for 10 years. And there was an opportunity to represent a new district that was going to cover San Antonio and Austin. And that was a 35th district at the time. And I was actually going to be up against Lloyd Doggett back then. And so for about 4 months, Lloyd and I were actually running against each other. And then, and this is for me one of the most memorable lessons in not really in politics, but in life. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, a federal judge separated the districts, declared that the Republican map was unconstitutional and or illegal, and separated the districts again. And so I was going to be able to run in the new 35th, and Lloyd was going to have his Austin-based district back. And then we had Thanksgiving, and then so I announced, he announced he's going to run in that Austin district. I announced I'm going to run in the 35th, and everything was great, right? I was relieved, right? Because Lloyd's a hell of a campaigner, just tireless. And so we go through Thanksgiving, and for 4 months we'd been running really hard, so I was wiped out. Like, I was tired. And on Friday, at about 5 o'clock, I was starting to fall asleep that day, Friday after Thanksgiving, and my cell phone rings. And it was my congressman, Charlie Gonzalez from San Antonio. And it was one of those calls where you're just about to fall asleep, and I was thinking, oh, I'll just call Charlie back. I said, oh, all right, let me answer it. So I answer the phone, and Charlie says, hey, I called to tell you that I'm not going to run for re-election, and it's going to be announced in about 20 minutes. So I had about 20 minutes to decide, was I going to still run in that new district, or was I going to run in my hometown district, the 20th district, which is the main San Antonio district, and which many of us had been thinking about for years. And those of us that represented San Antonio, the Gonzalez family, Henry B. Gonzalez represented it for 37 years. His son Charlie represented it for another 14. And I said that in those 20 minutes, we called the newspaper and said, I'm going to run in the 20th instead of the 35th, and started calling right away for endorsements. And that turned out to be a really fortuitous phone call, because they did away with Lloyd's Austin district, and Lloyd ended up running in that 35th district, and I ran in the 20th. So if I had not answered the phone, I don't know that I would have been in Congress, that I'd have made it to Congress. But those are kind of small things that happen to you in life, right? Where it was kind of a stroke of luck. And also grateful to Charlie Gonzalez for calling me and letting me know ahead of time.
That was so
But
nice.
that's how that's literally, I had done a lot of work on education, on healthcare, on economic development in the legislature. But it was also a little bit of luck, I think, that got me in there.
Yeah. So it's been a really hard year since the Trump regime took over. What do you feel the candidates who are running in 2026, what do you feel like we need to do to win elections right now in Texas?
I think we need to talk to as many people as we can, but also help them understand the situation in our country right now. I think people are feeling it. My wife and I have 3 young kids. We have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So those of y'all that have kids now, or you raise kids who are adults, you know that usually when you've got that many kids at home, you're always at the grocery store for something, right? There's something that goes empty, or you got to go get something. And so either Anna, my wife, or myself, we're at the grocery store all the time. And I could see during and after the pandemic, prices, and recently prices continue to go up and up. And there was a woman some time ago who came up to me at HEB, and once in a while people will stop me, and she said, "These prices are too goddamn high." And she said, "I'm not mad at you. I just want you to know these prices are too high." And I think that's how people are feeling. And so, yeah, so I say we got to let them know what's going on. I think they feel that economic pain, but we got to make sure that they connect it to the I think bad economic policies of Donald Trump and the Republican Party right now. And so that's actually, it's sometimes tougher than it seems, right? Like it's sometimes harder than saying it, especially because there's so much disinformation on social media about who's to blame or who's doing what. I'll give you a quick example of that. I think most people don't realize that Republicans have controlled the politics of this state now for a generation. And so when Greg Abbott tries to blame Democrats for things that are going on, even though he and a Republican majority have controlled the state for so long, there are some people that actually think, yes, Democrats are to blame for what's going on in Texas state government, right? And so that's what I mean, that we've got to go out there and actually talk to people and let them know, what the deal is.
Yes. So, what values drive you, and what Republican myths about Democrats do you want to debunk?
I mean, most of all, opportunity, the idea of opportunity for everyone, actually. I said that I grew up in a household that was really active in grassroots politics, and the idea was that everybody should have equal opportunity. And I still fundamentally believe that when government works right, it doesn't have to be heavy-handed, but when it works right, it can help build what I called for years an infrastructure of opportunity for people. And by that I mean, just as there's an infrastructure of roads and streets and highways that helps all of us get to where we want to go on the road, if you think about it, one of the beautiful things we've built up in this country is an infrastructure of opportunity that helps people get to where they want to go in life. So when we ask our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a mechanic or a firefighter or whatever it is, there's got to be in a society an infrastructure of opportunity to get there. And as Democrats, I feel like that's what we've spent a lot of time building, is that infrastructure of opportunity. And also, over the years, making sure that everybody has access to it. And so, in terms of the Republican myths, where do I start? Oh, I mean, it's so tough. It's so tough because I think social media has made misinformation a lot easier to spread, has inflamed people's passions because the social media algorithms show them things that make them angry and engage them in a way that makes them mad, and so that's tough. I mean, but you have just a lot of the name calling, right? Like, if you look at even my personal Facebook page, some of the folks that I went to high school with, that I grew up with, I saw, after the very ugly shooting of Charlie Kirk, right? That was a very ugly tragedy. But I saw somebody on Facebook that I've known, and they said something to the effect of, Democrats are vile. Everybody on the left is vile. And I thought, that was also before there was real information that came out about who was responsible and what was going on. But I thought, man, like, again, all of this like dehumanization of other people or casting people and in just one like broad swath, I don't think is healthy for our country. I don't think is helpful for our democracy. And I felt even during President Obama's time, when I would, I guess, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit of a long answer, but I want to speak to this. When I want to give you all a comparison, okay? I grew up in really inner city San Antonio, and somewhere around 1993, I'm going to use this as a comparison. San Antonio had the highest number of drive-by shootings of any major state in any major city in the state. I think more than Dallas, more than Houston, more than Austin. It was a lot. And I felt like when I would come back home from college and I would walk around, and I was walking around with other people my age, I'd go to Ingram Park Mall or somewhere else, I felt like people were angry, that you could sense the anger, especially in youth. And somewhere around 12 or 15 years ago, I really started to feel like people were getting angrier and angrier. And if you were out in public, you could kind of feel it. And I feel like there was a feeling like, you know what, I don't even want to deal with you. If you're of a different political party, if you have different views, I don't even want to hear it, right? Like there was a desire to be done with each other to some extent. That's what I sensed. And I think that social media, and I don't want to put all the blame on social media, but I do think that it's a big part, and it's in full bloom now, right? If we went back 20 years, 20 years ago, there was hardly even Facebook. I think it started maybe in 04, 05, right? So I do think that it has democratized politics, but in a way, it's also infected politics and like American discourse about policy as well.
Yes, I would agree with that. What are the top 3 issues that Democrats should be running on in 2026?
I think it's got to be centered around the economy, the price of things in general. People are really feeling economic pain. The economic policies of Donald Trump have hurt. The tariffs have hurt. We've seen more inflation. And then in Texas, I think things like lack of affordable child care for people, lack of affordable housing for folks, that's also been very damaging, continues to be very damaging. But also I think accountability. For those that are involved in state races, for example, in Texas races, there's got to be some measure of accountability. Let me take Greg Abbott as a policymaker, as a governor. How many times do you get to fail the state in a major way and remain as the head elected official in the state, right? You think about the winter storm, the lack of preparedness, and even in the days immediately during and after, the lack of effective response. Uvalde and the different tragedies and massacres and the lack of willingness to even engage in looking at any kind of gun safety reform. And then even in Kirk County had asked for years for a system that would alert people along the river there, a safety system that would alert people to rising waters, and the state said no. This is at a time that the state is holding on to a rainy day fund, the Economic Stabilization Fund, of $25 billion. $25 billion. And you can't give this county a grant of $1 million that they asked for. And so, for example, when I saw his picture recently, I think it was on the Express News, but I'm sure it was in newspapers and news sites all over the state. And it was a picture, I think, of him with Dan Patrick signing the legislation that they had passed in response to this tragedy. These are folks that want to get credit. They want to get credit for fixing problems that they helped create. Now look, Greg Abbott, he didn't make the waters rise, okay? But they could have provided that emergency response system, that safety system years ago that may have saved lives. And so I think there's got to be some element of accountability where as a candidate, you got to talk about the economy, you got to talk about housing, about things like childcare, about health care, because all of these policies that were just passed on the federal level are going to make things much more expensive for people in terms of health care. One last piece on that. I've told a story, and I think you've heard me, Nancy, when I've gone and spoken recently about the cost of health care and the fact that a few years ago I was diagnosed with something called neuroendocrine cancer. And the main treatment that I have to take every month, the list price of the injection for that is $24,000 per injection. So it really put into, now for years, I'm like many of us, I've been saying that we need to move to a system of universal health care. You can debate what that looks like, right? Whether it's Medicare for all or something else, but some system that covers people, because if you're facing a $24,000 per injection price and you don't have health insurance or some kind of coverage, you're not going to get that shot. And there's a lot of people in that situation because, yeah, that's one type of cancer. Cancer is one type of illness. People have sickle cell and diabetes and heart disease and all these other things that they're facing. And so when I think about the governor who refused to expand Medicaid for years and years, even though the federal government for years was going to pay 100% and then 90%, I think that decision literally has cost people their lives and their livelihoods, by the way, because people have gone bankrupt because of it. So these policy decisions for some people, they're a matter of life and death.
Yeah,
They're a matter of
absolutely.
life and death.
So, what advice would you give someone who's new to politics and wants to run for office in 2026?
If you're somebody who wants to run for office, I think first, I think start with, it depends what you want to run for also, right? If you're running for school board or state rep or city council or Congress. But always, I think, start with your strength. And your strength is the people around you, your immediate family and your friends. And for example, I don't know, if you grew up in Tyler, Texas, and you're running in Tyler, in your old neighborhood where you grew up, you would start with your family and your friends and your neighbors and your high school classmates that you went to school with and your middle school classmates. I mean, those people will form the core of your support. But also, I think you want to, if you're not, I think you want to get involved in different things because people will appreciate. I guess if you're running immediately, hopefully you're already involved. But if you're thinking about running in the future, get involved with things like neighborhood associations or Democratic Party clubs, things like that, because I think people appreciate that hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're in DC. What opportunities do you feel that Democrats have right now?
Well, I mean, I think we have an opportunity to really call out what's going on in the country, to talk about the suffering of the American people, to talk about what's at stake for folks, and really on a daily basis, what's at stake for people. We talked about prices and everything, but longer term, what's at stake for our democracy. We have a situation now where you have, for example, ICE agents who are picking people up off the street in masks sometimes without identifying themselves, without telling people where they're taking them. In Tarrant County, I believe, I just saw a video the other day of the county judge, Republican county judge there, kicking somebody out or removing somebody from the meeting because that person said that the actions of the county commissioner's court, I believe, were racist. I think they were probably talking about the redistricting, although I'm not certain. And so more and more there is this growing intolerance for difference of opinion. And we need to talk about what's at stake for the country when we go down that road. And it is a more authoritarian road.
Absolutely. So, let's talk a little bit about redistricting and like the temperature of what's going on right now across America. Do you think we will have fair elections in 2026?
Man, I am working towards that, and I hope so. Here's my concern. One of my concerns. So I serve on the Intelligence Committee, and I got on to the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives in 2016, in late July of 2016, shortly before all of the Russian interference in our elections, right? The Russians, and this is open source now because it's been announced, but the Russians tapped into the voter registration rolls of all 50 states in 2016. Okay? So since that time, really in mostly a bipartisan way, our government had set up a system to counter those kinds of cyber attacks, and put a task force together, implemented policy to do that. Well, Donald Trump now in his second term, in fact, we did some of that during Trump's first term. In his second term now, they have started to dismantle all that stuff, systematically dismantle all of those things. So, do I think our elections are safer when we're more vulnerable to interference by foreign governments and so forth, or even non state actors? No, I think it makes us more vulnerable. Unfortunately, I think it causes more doubt about the sanctity and the reliability of our elections. And so, the long and short of it is we're going to have to be very vigilant in our elections. Just very vigilant. And also, obviously, get people out to vote. We're in a state where they've increasingly tried to make it harder and harder. If you all know, for years we fought over things like voter ID, but they also did other smaller things or behind the scenes things. Like those of you that have been working on registering people for a long time, you remember that it used to be if you got deputized, for example, in your county, as long as you were deputized in your county, you could go register voters in any of the 254 counties. Well, around the same time that they did voter ID, they changed the law where you have to go get deputized in each individual county. So a lot of these things are these obstacles that they're putting in the way of people voting and getting people engaged to vote. But it makes our job tougher, but it also speaks like to the urgency of getting it done.
Yeah. So now we get to have fun. We get to do our little speed round like we did with Tallarico. So we're going to ask you some personal questions, and we can just have a good time. We want people to see the non-candidate side of you. So what is the last book you read?
Oh, probably Gabby's Dollhouse this morning to my daughter. It's going to be all these kids' books. No, actually, God, between literally reading children's books and reading Bill's, I started rereading. I don't know if anybody was a fan of Tom Wolfe, the American author. He wrote Bonfire of the Vanities and The Right Stuff. But there's I got into reading these collection of essays, like the best American essays. He has a book called The Purple Decades, and it's a collection of his writings from the 1960s and 70s. So I actually went back and started reading some of that.
That's cool. Who doesn't love Tom Wolfe? He's wonderful. What is your favorite word?
Hope. Hope.
That's great.
The slogan for my first campaign was Toward Tomorrow with Hope. In 2001, I put that on my signs back then.
Wonderful. What is your favorite song?
Oh, I mean, I'm a child of the 1980s, so I don't know. Are there any Gen Xers out there?
Same. Yeah.
The forgotten generation. All we hear about is Gen Z, right? Like, and millennials and everything. So I think I'm gonna have to go with the song "Thriller," I guess, by Michael Jackson. Like these questions about superlatives are always tough for me because I don't always rank things. Like this is my favorite or this is the best. But if I had to name one, I would say Thriller.
Okay,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, hold on a second. Let me do that again. Do you have a personal motto?
You know what? I was in Corpus years ago, and it's not. I mean, it's not. I didn't come up with this, but since I saw it probably 10 years ago or so, I always think about it. I was at a fair, and these folks at one of the booths, they gave me a T-shirt, and I think it was honoring a baseball coach from Robstown, Texas. And I guess maybe it was his motto, but the motto was, first you have to believe. It said, first you have to believe, right? I imagine before you can win, before you can overcome, but I always thought, like, given the politics of Texas, that's probably right. First you have to believe, right? And it's always stuck with me since then.
Great. What is your favorite meal?
Enchiladas de mole. If you go to a Mexican restaurant, they don't all have them. Like some of the Mexican restaurants don't have them. But for those people that have been to San Antonio, there's a restaurant in Southtown, Rosario's, and I go to Rosario's and I'll order enchiladas de mole.
Okay. So I know you're a really busy guy, but what is your favorite hobby?
Tennis. My brother and I are very competitive in tennis. We played in middle school and in high school, and we used to curse each other out. We were doubles partners, and we would like curse each other out when one of us made a mistake. And we still play sometimes.
Oh, wonderful. What is your favorite animal?
A brown Labrador Retriever, probably a dog.
Oh, that's great.
My kids are having this debate right now because they like cats more than dogs. But I'm allergic to cats, and so is my wife, I think. So we're trying to hold them off from getting cats.
Oh, okay. I can understand that. So, if we were to find out more information about your campaign or running for office, and what are your URLs and handles? Like, how can people support you?
Yeah, we're redoing our website now, so it was joaquincastro.com. But usually my handles are Joaquin Castro TX, like Texas, Instagram, X, like all of it stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are there any last words of inspiration you would like to give a room? Well, first of all, let me tell you who's in the room.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you're running for U.S. Congress.
All right.
Okay. Keep them raised. Raise your hand if you're running for statewide office. Raise your hand if you're running for a county seat. Okay. Raise your hand if you're running for a Texas House District or Senate. There we go. Raise your hand if you're running for a city office or school board. Okay. Raise your hand if you're sitting on a campaign and helping out with a campaign. Amazing. Now raise your hand if you plan on volunteering for a campaign or you're a precinct chair. Amazing. So thank you all so much. This is the
All
room
right,
you're
y'all.
talking to.
Well, I hope everybody wins. All right. I want to say, well, first of all, thank you, Nancy, for all of your advocacy over the years, for everything that you've built up to advocate and get people involved. To everybody who's working to change the politics of the state for the better. I know, I'm 50. I'm turning 51 next week on the 16th. And thank you. I know. This morning, my son was like on top of my head, and he said, "Why do you have gray hair?" Because I'm turning 51. But I know that there are folks that are more senior to me here, and y'all remember when this state was a Democratic state. And I think about, all of the people who worked their hearts out so much, so many friends that I've had and others who worked hard and who've passed away in recent years and never saw the state politics change. And I think about all they did. And I believe that we're going to change the politics of this state for the better. A state that works for the people, rather than for the powerful. But it's only going to happen if we all work together. And and first of all, I'm glad to see that it's people running for different offices also, right? Because it's Congress, but it's not just Congress and not just statewide offices. It's up and down the ballot, y'all. So please, take all of your energy and all of your passion and believe that you're going to win and get out there in November. I promise you, those of us that are in Congress and elected officials will work hard to do everything we can to make sure we have fair and free elections, right? Because in many ways our democracy is under attack. But you all do what you're doing, and we will see in the near future a time where Texas is a Democratic state. Thank y'all so much for everything y'all are doing.
Thank you. So, thank you so much to Congressman Joaquin Castro, and I want to thank you from the very bottom of my heart for making my dream come true by coming together today and doing this great event to energize Texas Democrats. So, the whole entire summit is now over, and thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.